it's really an honor to be here, and in fact, I'm so honored that when Ramesh asked me to do this, I forgot to ask him what he wanted me to talk about before hanging up the phone. And as I thought about it, I figured, you know, it might be useful to have an old-timer's view of where the industry is today. We're in a state of flux, as you know, and how SunShot fits in to that environment. The title that I came up with for that may lead to some confusion, the SunShot swerve. So let me explain what that is. But first, let me say that the essential purpose of my talk will be to answer the question, does Ramesh have delusions of grandeur or not, okay? The swerve actually was just stolen from a recent delightful book by Greenblatt called The Swerve, How the Modern World Was Created. And it details the finding of Epicurus's manuscripts in 300, that were written in 300 BC by a monk, and the subsequent journey of those manuscripts that had huge influence on Galileo and the early scientists. Epicurus dealt with he was an early atomist, and he innately felt that the world was mechanistic and followed some deterministic laws that, of course, he had no idea what they were, but he felt that way. And he had trouble with reconciling this with the idea of free will. So the way he solved that problem was to posit that the mind, if you put enough energy into something, the mind can actually alter the motions of the atoms momentarily and create a new outcome, okay? So what I have come to believe is that we have a modern version of that in the SunShot program, where so much intellect has come together that we will actually change the future in a positive way. Okay. How do we do this? Okay. So we're actually at a very exciting time in our industry, and I think it's almost a paradoxical time, which can give you a certain schizophrenic tension if you're in this industry. On the one hand, there's a huge amount of doom and gloom in the land, all about excess capacity, depressed prices, incentives being decreased around the world for deploying solar energy. However, when you step back, the market is absolutely huge today, about $100 billion, and it's growing rapidly. As one venture capital friend of mine said, you really cannot find another market that is both growing this quickly and this large. This is a very unique place to be. So I think we should all take heart from that fact that we're helping this transition. This is the way I see the key success factors or metrics that we need to monitor today for success in solar. And these have evolved over time. They're no longer the same success factors that one might have put up 10 or 20 years ago. We have three categories. We have to have technical feasibility, we have to have cost and financial feasibility, and we have to have societal feasibility for what we're trying to do. Today, the technical feasibility is largely answered. The issues really revolve around the impacts of high penetrations of renewables in the grid. The cost and financial feasibility is rapidly progressing, and certainly a lot of people are working in that area. And finally, the societal feasibility, we have to figure out how as a society we are going to put so much area of our country into generating energy. So why is the swerve really needed at this point? Well, we've clearly made remarkable progress. We are approaching cost parity in many respects for our generation assets. But there remain considerable barriers before we go ahead. So before we can make the final leap to the 80% that Dan talked about. And so let's kind of go through where we are and what we need to do. When I look at the way SunShot program has been put together, it seems to me that the unique aspects that are very far-reaching of this program are that it set very aggressive goals for module and BOS costs that have spurred innovation at all companies, not just companies funded by the SunShot program. It's recognized the importance of reducing BOS and soft costs and placed that on equal par with the technology. This is a huge change within our thinking about the problem that is spot on to what is needed and is going to have far-reaching consequences. And finally, it's recognized the importance of detailing the grid interactions that will happen when we have lots of non-dispatchable renewable resources hooked into our grid system. All of these have been elevated to essentially equal importance within the SunShot program, and this is truly remarkable, I think, transformation. For example, on the grid integration, there's a portal now on the SunShot that's called the High Penetration Solar Portal. This is amazing new stuff, and some of the things that you can find on there were like Dan Arvizu showed in his last slide. He showed that it is technically feasible, it has been shown now, that it's technically feasible to power 80% of our energy needs with just wind and solar. So the old curiosity about, well, or the old statements from Senator Snort, if you will, that it can't possibly work because sun doesn't shine at night or whatever, we are getting solid technical understanding of how it will work when we reach those high penetration levels. And we have come a remarkable long way. This, I think we should all recognize that. This is one of the first commercial solar cells you can buy from Hoffman Electronics, circa about 1960, and you can see the specs on it down there at the bottom. You can also see that it's not textured, so you can see my reflection in it, but you also see that it had no grid on the front, so it was, in modern parlance, an emitter wraparound cell, okay? Very curious, but I only put that there just to show the contrast of what's happened since then. This is a typical larger scale solar plant that's close by here, in fact, operating today. Big progress. And if you step back, you think, well, the signs are there everywhere of huge progress. You've probably maybe seen this slide, certainly been used in presentations before, that shows in 2009 the new installed capacity in the European Union, and wind was the largest one, natural gas the second, and PV the third. The important message that sort of came out of this slide back then in 2009 was that renewables combined were greater than all the other energy sources added in Europe in 2009. Well, that was 2009. We're in a very rapidly changing field, as you know. In 2011, PV was the largest addition to capacity in Europe and was 47% of the new capacity installed in the European Union. Another snapshot, another way to look at that, this slide is from Professor Eike Weber's talk at the Photovoltaic Specialist Conference. It shows how with this amount of capacity now that's renewables capacity that's in Germany, what's really happening. This is the generation month by month for this year in Germany. The lower green bar is wind and the upper bar is solar. You can see in the winter that wind was the dominant one, but as you move towards the sunnier parts of the year, as sunny as it gets in Germany, solar picked up. But the sum of the two was about the same throughout the first part of this year. And if you add those up, Germany got 13% of its energy this year, the first 4 months, from wind and solar. I mean, this is pretty remarkable when you think about it. On some days, solar, in fact, alone was over half the German load. Huge progress. And I think a lot of the general public and a lot of the politicians and policymakers are really not able to keep up with how fast these things are happening. The feed-in tariffs are coming down. In Germany, is the black one there shows the steady drop in Germany of their feed-in tariff on their renewable portfolio standard. The remarkable, only reason I show this chart is that the remarkable thing is that it's now below the retail rate for residences. So suddenly we have a situation, a transformation, a phase transformation almost in Germany, where solar on your roof is cheaper than buying it from the utility. So people are having to switch to self-consumption. This shows a slide that's also been used a lot, and it gives the Lazard Capital's concept of the LCOE on various generation options, the top ones being renewables, the bottom the conventional ones. And you know, there's, the main point of this is that, solar is within the range with the ITC included of the conventional sources in terms of LCOE. This was for plants bid in 2010, designed to be constructed in 2012. So this is for plants coming on today. So we're making good ground. We obviously are not totally there because the ITC is necessary to achieve these targets, but it's a fast-changing world. Lazard just came out with their new plants. These are the plants being bid now for installation or for operating start in 2015. And these are the prices that people are getting. You'll notice that the ground-mounted PV, for example, is as low as $60 per megawatt hour, 6 cents per kilowatt hour. Pretty darn good. Of course, the ITC's in there. But I think it's pretty clear that we've made huge progress on the SunShot goals of generating power about 6 cents a kilowatt hour. We've come about half the way there, roughly speaking, in the last few years. And we have another factor of 2 to go. Now, you've all seen learning curves till the cows come home, and so I just throw this up. This is a learning curve that's kind of partial to me because it's the one that we put together when we sold Cypress Semiconductor on investing in SunPower. It was done in 2002, and that is the projection that we made, the little triangles there. We used the learning curve as a projection tool, and that's what we promised the price of modules would be over time when Cypress made its investment. And it's interesting to see what actually happened in the industry. Going forward, we had a little blip where the poly pricing caused prices to go up, but then we essentially, by 2010, had returned to the learning curve. So we kept marching down this. Now let's zoom in on what's really happening today, and this is where the meat is. This shows the recent pricing coming down, and you see that by 2011, we actually came below the learning curve considerably, about $1.25 a watt at the module level. And people were starting to get excited. You can see some other projections out there. For example, iSupplies, those little gray triangles. They were saying at that time in 2011 that 2012 prices would be down at 99 cents a watt. Many people thought, where could they possibly have gotten that aggressive a goal? Nothing like that could ever possibly happen. You can also see on there the SunShot goal by the end of the decade to get pricing down to 50 cents a watt. So when the industry first looked at this, the SunShot goals, we thought, this looks impossible. It's not on the learning curve, and we believe in the learning curve. We've been marching down the learning curve. Something would have to happen to really trigger things. That's the swerve to get us down below that sort of mechanical learning curve activity. Well, things are happening. If you go into 2012, you can see that the pricing has come down to the $1 a watt or even below range. If you look at what various companies are announcing, for example, just recently Ying Li and Trina announced that they will be at 70 cents a watt or less, actually, by the end of this year, 2012, and that's plotted on there. So that's, of course, a manufacturing cost. The prices have to be higher than that. But clearly something is going on. It has happened here. And oh, and by the way, if you look at complete installed plants, the kind of bids that are out there right now for large-scale plants are in the range of $1.20 to $1.70 a watt. So we are truly, truly marching towards the SunShot goals. So I'm going to draw a little line there and say that the learning curve has taken a jog, very likely. There are many reasons for this, but I firmly believe that one of the reasons is the slap in the face that these audacious goals that came out of the SunShot program gave our community. People are now looking at all kinds of ways to get these costs in place. This is examples from the silicon roadmap that NREL is putting together, showing 60 cents a watt module costs fairly soon. I think you can see from that previous chart that that's very much baked in. This is basically going to happen. As an example of what these goals did at SunPower, this shows a slide that we presented over a year ago on our goals for our roadmap on costs, and it showed the historic costs. It shows the black line. We were promising investors that we'd be at $1 a watt by Q4 of 14, by the end of 2014. Now, our costs are, of course, a little bit higher with our high-efficiency panels, but we get paid more, so you can't translate these exactly to generic-type solar cells. But anyway, that was our goal, and we felt that with a lot of innovation and thin substrates, et cetera, that out a few years beyond that, we could get to about 60 cents a watt. Well, we've rethought all of that, and these are our new goals. We've accelerated reaching $1 a watt by a year. We'll be at $1 a watt now a year early. I attribute a lot of this rethinking to the climate that has been created around the mission to make photovoltaics a truly large-scale energy source. Can't give a talk without talking about the importance of energy, of efficiency, so in this whole thing. This is a slide that shows the value chain for wafer, crystal, and silicon, and you're all familiar with this, going from poly through complete systems. What's more interesting, however, is to replot this with the bars equal to the actual cost at each point as you march along this value chain. And you can see it distorts it quite a bit. The system now, and this is just the area-related costs in the system, not any of the project costs or anything like that. The system is fully 38% of the installed cost. Turning a solar cell into a panel, which involves just laying it behind a sheet of glass with some plastic and laminating it, is 21% of it. And the rest of those are rather smaller, as you can see there. Our approach has been to focus on the solar cell, that 14%, and try and get the efficiency up, increasing perhaps the cost of making the cell, but leveraging everything else in this value chain you see here. And it's very easy to do the math on this. For example, if you doubled the cost of making the cell, you'd add another 14 percentages on here, right? So in going for 100% to 114% would be the total cost. If, however, you increase the efficiency of the cell more than 14%, you win, because you get more than 14% output. And the remarkable thing is that from the panel to the installed system is fully 59% of the cost, okay? Now, this is something that a lot of people should have thought about a few years ago when they got interested in this sort of thing, because a generic silicon solar cell is about 17% efficient. Suppose you took that solar cell and you turned it into you made it free. You figured out how to make a solar cell for nothing instead of a standard wafered silicon solar cell. What would the efficiency have to be to break even? Well, if you take 59% of 17, that turns out to be 10%. So the message is that if you come up with a free solar cell that's only 10% efficient, but you have to laminate it behind glass, you've gone nowhere, okay? That's the opposite side of that. But it turns out that the value of efficiency is even greater than that, we're finding. Efficiency, especially, we used to realize that it was in area-constrained environments. Efficiency was quite important because you could get more energy off a given roof, for example, and that allowed more revenue stream, and that impacted all of the costs, not just the manufacturing costs, not just the area-related installation costs, but all of your costs, like permitting costs, cost of the sale, cost of everything, because you're generating more revenue for the same project, if you will. And those impacts are huge. It used to be thought that, well, that's fine for roofs. Clearly, that's a constrained environment. But take a power plant, for example. That's not. You can have a low efficiency power plant because the desert's big and you just make it bigger. That's not the way the industry works. The industry works where a developer gets a site of land and says, this is where we're going to put the PV system, and then he comes to the company and says, what can you do for me? The one who can get the most energy off of that plot of land has a real leg up in the economics. We've just recently announced the production of our Generation 3 cells. This shows a histogram coming off the production line with median efficiency of 23.6 and the bin cutoff at 22. So anything below 22% on this line is scrap. And that's allowed us to make some pretty efficient modules. We just had a module tested at NREL at 21% total area efficiency. That includes the frame and everything. So certainly at SunPower, we're continuing to try and push this efficiency sort of metric. But we're not the only one. This is also a slide from Mikey Weber's talk. All over the world, people are pushing efficiency. And they're coming at it from a whole bunch of different directions within the wafered silicon community. What is very clear, though, is that it will not be very long in the future before 20% will become the standard silicon solar cell. So this is important to realize for both the people in wafered silicon and the people that want to compete with wafered silicon. We see a bunch of trends that are allowing this to happen, evolutionary trends and revolutionary trends. You can read through these. I don't want to spend time really reading this in particular, but in the revolutionary side, the kerfless wafers is certainly standing out as very exciting. Perhaps you saw that SunPower recently made an investment in an epi-based kerfless wafer company by the name of Selexel. So that really brings me back to what the message that I want to leave, because we're all involved in innovation. What are the issues that we face in the PV module arena? That's my area of expertise as far as innovating today. One is that we're in an environment now where the scale advantage is very large for the module makers that are there today. Gigawatt plants out there. Very sophisticated supply chains that bring their costs down substantially. And so the costs continue to decrease relentlessly, as you've just seen. You might call this the moving target issue. This has been an issue all along in our community, that the cost target keeps moving down. I know it very well from my days trying to do concentrated, high concentration PV with silicon solar cells. We never could catch that moving target and had to punt. Now people have taken over using high efficiency cells in that approach, and maybe they will, but it is a difficult job because every time you think you've gotten ready to go to market, you come up for air and you find that now the price points have gone down from where you were planning a year or two earlier. And the efficiency of crystalline silicon continues to increase. As I mentioned, I think greater than 20% will be the norm pretty soon, and that's also a moving target. This is, by the way, something relatively recent phenomenon. If you plot the module efficiency of commercial modules from about 1983 to 1998 or so, it was almost constant. There was essentially no change. If you looked at the cells that Bir Yerkes made at Solar Technologies that became Arco Solar in 1975, they were 14.5% efficient. If you looked at the cells that the progeny companies, eventually Shell, was making in 1999, they were 14.5% efficient. There was very little change through that period. That's all changed now, and everybody is understanding the importance of efficiency, and as I said, 20% will probably be the norm. It requires a massive manufacturing investment. Now, you have to realize that at the face of it, PV is a big manufacturing operation. You can quantify that just to get a reference frame here, that if we were to supply 20% of the global electricity, we have to make 5,000 square miles of panels. So this is a massive undertaking and requires huge investments in plant and equipment. And it's not going to come forth if there's much risk involved in the whole thing. So there's a lot of risk in bringing unproven technologies, and that's another barrier that the innovator simply has to deal with. And finally, almost unique to our industry is that we have a high-tech semiconductor product that must last 25 years outdoors. And I challenge you, for example, to tape your iPhone to your roof and then come back in 25 years and see how well it's operating. So we have a unique issue here. I certainly applaud the fact that NREL has gotten very involved in understanding reliability, the science of reliability, but it is in fact very hard to prove the necessary reliability to justify the investments above without years of field work, without good science behind the degradation mechanisms that need to be done. So my final view is that all the viable solar technologies, as we look at them, whether it be crystalline silicon, thin films of the various types, CPV, CSP, they're all basically capable of $1 a watt. I think that, and perhaps the unique thing here is that at one point, maybe 5 years ago, people would have said crystalline silicon is not, it has to be a thin film. Well, what I'm saying is, things have evolved to the point where the crystalline silicon is in the crowd with everybody else. We're all striving for $1 a watt. Everybody else, of course, has those barriers that they have to overcome caused by the massive investment in crystalline silicon. So I think that it now finally has secured, through the innovation that's gone on in this sector, it's secured a place in the future of our PV energy system going forth. So, in closing, we certainly look forward to the continued contributions of the SunShot program towards meeting our goals, and I think it has been a truly remarkable thing. My conclusion is that, Ramesh does not have delusions of grandeur. Thank you very much.